Hi, I'm State Senator Joe Markley outside the Senate chamber on Thursday evening. We were in session for a while this afternoon and we're going to go back in shortly. I expect we'll also be in session Friday, hopefully not Saturday, then the marathon on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, with our business concluding at midnight on Wednesday, June 7th. And of course, the biggest part of our business is the budget. And the biggest part of the budget, or one big part of the budget, is the talk about union concessions to try to bring down costs so we can close the enormous $5 billion budget deficit in the next 2-year budget. And I want to take a few minutes to talk about the union contracts and about a proposal that Senate Republicans put forward yesterday. I actually taped a discussion on this previously, and when I watched it, I was so confused myself, I thought I had to try to do it over again. So forgive me, it's going to be a little bit dense, and it might be a little bit lengthy, and I may have to look down a few times at my notes, but I'll try to give you the most succinct and straightforward explanation of where we stand on this issue right now. The governor at the beginning of the session said that he wanted to get about $1.5 billion in savings from the unions to close what was then a $3 billion deficit. And negotiations reportedly went on all during the session, and just last week he came forward and said, I have gotten my $1.5 billion worth of savings. And in exchange for that, the union asked that the contracts be extended 5 more years to 2027. What that means is it would be 10 years before we could have a negotiation with the unions about all aspects of the contract. We'd be locked into what we've got now for 10 years. This, to my mind, has been a mistake that governors have made repeatedly, not just Governor Malloy, although he did it too, but Republican governors as well, to get short-term concessions out of the unions, but trade off longer-term costs. And frankly, I think we're at the point where we're paying the piper. The long-term costs are starting to catch up with us, and I would be very reluctant to extend those contracts under any circumstances. It would have to be a very good deal to get me interested. We have done analysis as a caucus of what was involved in those concessions, and based on the analysis of the $1.5 billion of savings, $1.3 billion could be achieved purely by legislative action. In other words, it involves statutory changes which are not, which don't require negotiation with the union. Only $187 million over 2 years of savings is because of the cooperation of the union in this case. Our feeling is that that amount is simply not worth the extension of the contract, and I agree with that position. I'll say a further problem with this is that although the unions have made cost savings concessions, they've also insisted as part of that on a no layoff policy. Our analysis of the budget would say it simply won't work. There's no way, given the amount of savings that we've achieved, to go through these additional years without any layoffs. It's impossible to balance the budget without large tax increases, and we're not looking to do large tax increases. Another problem, of course, is that when that $1.5 billion target was set, we were talking about a $3 billion deficit. Now we're talking about a $5 billion deficit. And our feeling is, just as we've had to cut back more severely in other aspects of the state budget in order to reach that target, we have to achieve more in union concessions in order to make that target work. What we have proposed instead at a press conference that we held yesterday was that we go ahead and by statute make the changes to achieve those budget savings in the union contract. And in order to get more than that, we've proposed other statutory changes, which I think are eminently reasonable. That would include increasing the course load for UConn professors, prohibit any new contracts from having mandatory staffing provisions that say that you have to have a certain number of people and cannot reduce that number, prohibiting future contracts to have meal and clothing allowances and things like that written into the statute, and eliminating a number of partisan positions, executive assistant positions, deputy commissioner, executive secretary positions that are filled basically with political appointees. That would bring us a savings of approximately $2.2 billion, which, coupled with the cuts which we have previously released, would result in a balanced budget. That would be a balanced budget without new taxes, that increases the educational cost-sharing program with the government, that protects towns from statutory, protects municipal grants so that the towns don't face the reductions they're currently making, that keeps the tax-exempt category status for hospitals, that does not include tolls but finds a way to fund road schemes, and lowers taxes for retirees by eliminating Social Security and pensions from the state income tax. That budget is available for your perusal at ctsenaterepublicans.com, and I think it is a remarkably good product. In fact, I hope it still can be brought forward to a vote before this legislative session ends on June 7th, because I believe it is a blueprint for how we can go forward, get out of our immediate situation, and make long-term structural changes. So if you're interested, it's available line by line at ctsenaterepublicans.com. Now, the reaction of the governor, the reaction of the unions was to cause concerns with municipal employees who would not be impacted by these changes at all. I heard from them myself personally today. This is only a budget, a change in laws which would involve state employees. And frankly, I believe it would be good for the municipal employees in the long term, because it would reduce the pressure on the state to cut state aid to the towns. That's where the municipal employees are going to get the pressure from. If we can't find savings elsewhere, is by a reduction in state grants. The other reaction that we have had is the response from the governor, which to me was very discouraging. If you saw the Waterbury Republican this morning, it says, my way or veto. This reminded me a lot of the situation we had back here in 1991 when Lowell Weicker was governor. He insisted on an income tax, and he declared he would veto, and did in fact veto, any tax that didn't include an income tax. I think it's a very short-sighted and unfortunate reaction by Governor Malloy. And again, as I said, I'm hoping that this budget might be brought to a vote, attract some Democratic support because of how much it accomplishes, and go downstairs to the House. I don't see any other way that we get a budget through before June 7th. If we don't do it by June 7th, the next deadline would be July 1st, which is when the fiscal year ends. If we don't do it by July 1st, then we go forward with the governor attempting to work off of the previous year's budget with a good deal of executive power to make decisions. And we might find ourselves in the position that the federal government finds itself in, unable to pass any kind of budget at all, operating on continuing resolutions. That would be a disaster for the state of Connecticut. There's only one way forward, folks. No tax increases, stability for the municipalities, sacrifice by all levels of state government, and a budget that makes structural changes that allow us to right the ship going forward. If you want to know about that budget, go to ctsenaterepublicans.com. If you're not following me already or receiving these videos regularly, go to my website, senatormarkley.com. As I said, I expect we'll be back in session tomorrow. If I've got some big news, I'll try to get back to you. Otherwise, it'll be Monday. I appreciate your attention to this. There's a lot to say, and I hope I've said it cogently, but I'll do my best to keep you informed. Thank you.